Joining us now, former House Speaker Newt Gingrich. Mr. Speaker, you know, I'm getting into this moment of time here, and I think Ted Cruz at the start of this hour really honed in on your area of expertise. You are a former professor and you are a historian by trade, not a politician, because I know you so well. And when you think of the history of this great republic, and this has never happened, let alone one time, but now this is the fourth time to a former president, and also the chief rival, the leading rival, opposition rival to the current president that's running for re-election. It does add a lot of historical significance here. Your reaction to that part of it?
Well, look, I think what you're seeing tonight is one tree in a forest. And I think we are drifting towards the greatest constitutional crisis since the 1850s and the rise of secession and the Civil War. I don't mean that as hyperbole. If you read Andy McCarthy's remarkable book, Ball of Collusion, which came out in 2019, he makes very clear that it is Barack Obama who corrupts the Justice Department. It is Hillary Clinton who routinely breaks the law and gets away with it. And now we have Joe Biden who's learned. He's learned from Obama that doesn't matter what you do, if you're a liberal Democrat, you will not be prosecuted. He learned from Hillary that a person in high public office can get millions and millions of dollars. And they learned from watching Donald Trump that a true outsider willing to take on the entire system could destroy their entire machine. So what you're seeing across the country is a desperate last-ditch effort by a corrupt machine to destroy their most dangerous opponent in a way which not only breaks the Constitution, destroys the rule of law, and establishes a moment of bitterness, which I think will last for a generation or more. I think this is going to be a horrendous period, and we just need to understand the people who want to control America and dictate to the rest of us will break any law, lie about any topic, and manipulate the system any way they can. And that includes a lot of the elite news media.
Let me ask you, Mr. Speaker, this question, because we are now heading into the very busy political season. That means caucuses, that means primaries. We know the special counsel in the Washington, D.C. case has stated publicly he'd like that trial to begin on January 2nd. That is headed right up and butted right up against the Iowa caucuses, following the New Hampshire primary, following that South Carolina, you know, heading into Super Tuesday. How is it possible that if Donald Trump wants to even continue his run for the nomination, how does he thread that needle and navigate, you know, the complications that obviously would go along with that?
You know, what his enemies don't understand is that Donald Trump's not a candidate. He is the personification of a national movement. That's what you saw when the two governors went to the racetrack the other night in Iowa, and people began booing both of them, including the very popular governor of Iowa. That's what you saw at the state fair. You weren't seeing a normal candidate. You were seeing a person who personifies for 45 or 50% of the country their hope that they can save the country from what they see as a stunningly corrupt, bad machine trying to control their lives. So let me give you an example. In 1978, when I was running and finally winning after 2 defeats, Dick Cheney was running for the first time in Wyoming. He had a heart attack. His wife helped invent cardiacs for Cheney. And so people who had heart problems all over Wyoming began campaigning for Dick because he was in a hospital recovering. I think if they get Donald Trump locked into a room, they're going to find 5, 10, 15 million Americans willing to campaign as Trump surrogates, willing to go out there and say, I'm going to work for him because I'm not going to let him be defeated by a totally corrupt person. But I'll go a step further. I really believe that the Republicans in the House should cut off Jack Smith's money. I think that his last day on the payroll should be September 30th. They should do whatever it takes to close down this entire anti-constitutional ruthless breaking of the law in the most, I think this is so dangerous to the very survival of the republic that it has to be stopped.
Okay, let me ask you this, Mr. Speaker, because we have really significant, serious allegations. I went through a list of lies that candidate and President Joe Biden told the American people. He lied when he said that he never once spoke to his son about his foreign business dealings or his brother or, quote, anybody for that matter. He said it as a candidate. He said it as a president. Then we're looking at, a phone call December 4th of 2015. And this is Joe Biden getting a phone call with Hunter and Burisma executives. Hunter, of course, by his own admission, addicted to drugs at the time. He's doing these, multi-million-dollar deals with many countries, many of which don't even like us at all. And yet he admits on Good Morning America he has no experience, but he's doing energy deals with China, with CEFC, and energy deals with Burisma. Well, then, as a result of that phone call on December 4th, 2015, that set into motion what ultimately became Joe Biden, vice president, leveraging $1 billion taxpayer dollars in Ukraine, saying you've got 6 hours to fire a prosecutor. Who's the prosecutor? A guy by the name of Victor Shokin. Who's Victor Shokin? The guy that was investigating Burisma, that was paying Joe Biden's son what was ultimately millions of dollars. So, son of a bee, within 6 hours, they fired the guy. The investigation stops. Ukraine got their $1 billion in loan guarantees. And guess what? Hunter Biden continued to be enriched and continue to get paid by Burisma, again, while he is admittedly a drug addict and also a guy that admits he had no experience in energy, oil, gas, coal, or Ukraine. Can you explain that to me? Can you explain these shell corporations that Comer's committee has found? Can you explain what Hunter and the grandchildren did for these millions? Because apparently they all got paid.
Sure. Look, you're making it too complicated. They're crooks. They lie. Since they're crooks and they lie, what you just described were crooks who were lying. Now, the problem for the American people is we really can't quite believe that people in public office, I mean, Hillary's the same way. Hillary made $37 million as Secretary of State by selling 20% of America's uranium to a Russian company, which gave the Clinton Foundation $37 million. They just lie. These people are bad people doing bad things, and that's why we're headed towards the greatest constitutional crisis since the Civil War. Because at least half the country now, despite every effort of the New York Times and every effort of the Washington Post and every effort of the big networks, the country itself is beginning to come to grips with the fact that they have in the White House a corrupt family which has been willing to sell out America to China, Russia, Ukraine, Romania, Kazakhstan, and then lie about it. They had a Secretary of State doing the same thing.
But we're not waiting for an indictment on the Bidens to be handed down tonight. Just the opposite happened. And this is where, again,
of course,
the Judiciary Committee is looking into weaponization and how the FBI and DOJ may have been politicized. We're not looking at possible indictments just handed down a little less than an hour ago as it relates to the Biden family. No, sweetheart deal was given to Biden by the guy that Merrick Garland just appointed special counsel. After he was been investigating this issue for 4 years, he was given a little tap on the wrist, no jail time, and oh, by the way, anything else you might have done wrong in that time period, that'll all go away.
Sean, you know I love you. You know we have a great, wonderful friendship. But like almost every American, you keep coming back and describing this as though it's complicated and as though it's difficult to understand. This is a drama. It's a Greek tragedy. What we have is a system. The current president, President Obama, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, leaders in the Justice Department, leaders in the FBI, leaders in some of our major news media, and this system is corrupt. Now, everything you just described is perfect, isn't it? If you start in the morning and you say, gee, I wonder what the corrupt system did today, one, to protect itself, and two, to try to destroy its major opponent. The rest of the day works out pretty well. You understand exactly what's happening. It's not complicated. It's just bad. and it's scary, and it should scare us because it threatens the very fabric of the American constitutional system.
Do you anticipate with now what will be 4 indictments against Donald Trump, 4 arraignments of Donald Trump, and in the case of Georgia in Fulton County, we both lived in Georgia. We met in Decatur, Alabama, but we really got to know each other, and I was the MC of your event the night you became Speaker. Do you believe, I do not, for example, believe that New York City, the jury pool of only 12% of Trump voters is going to be fair to Donald Trump? I don't believe a little over 5% in D.C. I think it's going to be hard to get a fair jury, a fair jury panel in D.C. And Fulton County, I think, is about 24% that voted for Donald Trump. Do you think you can get a fair trial in Fulton County? You're from Georgia.
Look, there's a simple test. Challenge these left-wing crazies to try Donald Trump in West Virginia. Now, if it's okay to try him in D.C., where he got 5% of the vote, why isn't it okay to try him in West Virginia, where he got 70%? And, of course, none of them would want to try him in West Virginia because you could never convict him, period. And the fact is, the average American knows if you're in a jury pool, which was 19-1 for Biden over Trump, that is not a fair jury. That's not an honest jury. That's not a jury of your peers. That is a rigged game by a really bad person. Remember, Jack Smith was repudiated unanimously by the Supreme Court for destroying Governor Bob McDonnell. He literally changed the law in order to destroy Governor McDonnell, and the Supreme Court repudiated him. Didn't help McDonnell. He was out of office. He had already been smeared. But this is the guy they chose, and then he chose D.C. at 19-1 against Trump in order to try this case. It just tells you that this is a corrupt system doing corrupt things, and frankly, I think Republicans are going to have the guts to stand up and say, no, this is over. And the first place to do that is the budget started and just cut off the money on September 30th.
All right, Mr. Speaker, we really appreciate you being with us.